Subaru is living a chill life training while Rem is in a coma, but one day, Emilia receives an invitation to Pristella where things get dangerous because of the archbishops. After training a bit, Subaru warily falls down and happily says he cleared it. Beatrice gives Subaru a towel and he says he feels alive again, so she says he can thank Petra personally for that. He remembers that it's been 1 year since he entered into the contract and admits time sure flies. He cheerily says he's gotten a lot stronger over the past year too, and tells her to just take a look at this secret training facility. It's packed with tough attractions that would make most adults throw in the towel, and he can get through them all flawlessly now like a true gym bro. Beatrice says he and Garfield are the only ones who call it a secret training facility. Petra informs them that there's a visitor at the mansioner and Emilia wants them both there. Subaru meets Mimi, who says she's a grown-up woman now, but he argues that no one who takes a flying leap into his head the moment they see him is a grown-up. He thanks her for coming out here and wonders if Julius is here too, but she says he's not, so he doesn't need to worry. When Rem sees Subaru with Beatrice and Mimi, she calls him a pervert, but he hurriedly says she's the pervert if she thinks this scene is anything but heartwarming. Garfield opens the door and tells them to get in here already since Otto and Emilia aren't much of a welcoming party. Emilia introduces Subaru as her knight, so the man gets up, introduces himself as Joshua Jukulius, and says he has come here as a messenger for Lady Anastasia Hashin. Emilia confirms that Joshua is Julius's younger brother. Subaru notices that he does have that same sharp look in his eyes and forces himself to compliment him, so Otto asks him to just stop talking. They sit down and Joshua asks who Beatrice is, so Subaru says she's an Emilia's child, but she annoyingly tells him to stop teasing Joshua and reminds him that kissing doesn't make a baby. In that case, Joshua asks what the purpose is of Beatrice being here, so Subaru says she's a great spirit he has a contract with. Joshua admits he's surprised to learn that Subaru truly is a spirit knight. He says his brother is also a spirit knight. Subaru slowly reveals he's done a lot to help them, hearing which Otto asks if he's really so against admitting that Julius helped them. Joshua starts praising his brother, so Emilia sees that he really loves Julius. He apologizes and admits he loses all restraint when it comes to his family and decides to deliver the message his master, Anastasia, has sent for Emilia. He says Anastasia wants to invite her to the Watergate city of Pristella, where they are holding a party since Anastasia believes she has found what Emilia seeks. He says a merchant in Pristella has the magic crystal she desires, which she wants for recalling a great spirit. Later, they say goodbye to Mimi and Joshua, and Subaru notices that Emilia doesn't look too happy. She says she's a bit afraid to end up owing a debt to Ms. Anastasia, explains that Pristella is one of the 5 biggest cities in Lugunica and is right on the border with the city-state of Karaji. It's in the middle of a lake, and when it rains, the whole city ends up underwater, so it's surrounded by tall walls. She wonders if it's wrong to believe that Anastasia is just being nice, so Subaru says he hates to say it, but all the royal selection candidates have their peculiarities. She mutters that she has a lot of things to tell Puck, so Subaru cheerily says he has a lot of grudges to take out on him too. Later, Roswell admits it worries him a bit to send Emilia and Subaru there alone, but they should be fine with Garfield and Otto. He asks if it's safe to assume that Ram will be staying behind at the mansion. Ram confirms this, so he says he'll be counting on Beatrice to watch over the 4 of them. Later, Subaru sits down beside a sleeping Rem and says he won't be able to see her for a while, but he's got lots of things to tell her today. The next morning, as they begin their journey, Otto decides to tell them about where the royal selection currently stands before they meet Anastasia. Duchess Kirsten and Anastasia Hashin were seen as the top pick and leading rival, while the other 3, including Emilia, were just there to balance the numbers according to most people. However, over the past year, opinions of her on the streets have changed, and her achievements in working with 2 powerful forces to take out the White Well and a Sin Archbishop played a big role in that. The other 2 number balancing candidates, especially Priscilla, have made progress as well. Influential people who were concerned about the state of affairs quickly joined her side, and her beauty allows her to manipulate folks very easily, so she is now revered as the Sun Princess and gains momentum by the day. On the other hand, Felt's only strength was knight, but she brought strong soldiers to her side and initiated massive reforms in the domain, so during the past year, no pieces have fallen off her board. Since Duchess Krush lost her memories, her outlook is not favorable, and Anastasia is the only candidate who hasn't lost any momentum. Emilia remembers that Emilia has a big business called the Hoshin Company backing her and says she has a good idea of the situation now. When they arrive, Subaru notices that the security is really tight and mutters that this is feeling more and more like a water prison. They enter the city and notice that it's almost maze-like, since the city was built according to the canals, which leads to some parts of the land looking pretty complicated. They reach an inn called Wings of the Water and Subaru sees that it looks pretty traditional. They meet Anastasia and Julius, and Subaru is creeped out by how Joshua is calling him sir, so Julius says his status may have changed, but it seems to have had little effect on his disposition. Julius suddenly notices Beatrice and immediately gets down on his knees. He apologizes and says he had no idea such a high-ranking great spirit was accompanying them, so Subaru says he's contracted with Beatrice. Beatrice formally asks if she can request some delicious tea and pastries. Mimi cheerily takes Garfield to show him around the inn, so the others head inside too. Emilia notices that Subaru really seems to know a lot about this place and asks where he studied up so much on Karaj's style. Anastasia says this sort of Wafu architecture is traditional in Karaji and was built by Hoshin of the Wilderness, who is a very creative individual. Anastasia decides to get to the topic they've been waiting for and reveals that the crystal they want is in the hands of the heir to the biggest trade company in this city, so Julius has arranged a dragon-drawn boat to take them and draw them all to the Muse Company, where they will meet a man known as the Songstress Maniac. On the boat, Subaru sees the tower that controls the flow of the water in the entire city, and Otto explains that it uses water magic stones to control the flow. He tells them to be careful since getting the water dirty here is penalized. They suddenly notice that Subaru doesn't look too well, and he says he's about to throw up. He and Beatrice get off while the rest continue to the Songstress Maniac, but after calming down a bit, Subaru says they should get back to them before Emilia misses him and starts bawling. As they start walking, Subaru asks if this is the right way to get there by land, so Betty says she's not lost, but if he's worried, they could ask someone for directions just in case. They arrive at a clearing and see a girl playing music in front of a crowd. Subaru realizes these lyrics are pretty terrible and accidentally kills the mood, so the people in the crowd tell him off and throw some junk at him. Subaru warily gets up and apologizes to the girl, but she suddenly says she came up with a new song. As she starts singing, Subaru joins her, so Betty mutters that it feels like she's the one in the wrong and she won't accept it. The girl introduces herself as a bard making only this instrument and living with, and her voice, and says she's Liliana. She says she doesn't mind showing them the way to the Songstress Maniac, but says they listen to her song, so they should pay her. She takes them to a location and recognizes Subaru as the little girl user, so he says he has some objections to that nickname. She's stunned by the fact that a legend stands right before her eyes and tells them that Kiritaka is head over heels for her and would do anything for her, so if she talks to him, those business talks should go crashing right forward. She rushes into the building and tries barging into the room where Emilia is having a meeting with Subaru, but Subaru tries to hold her back. Kiritaka opens the door and hurriedly throws a magic stone, telling Subaru to get his hands off of Liliana. Later, Ada tells Subaru he ruined the deal they were about to make. They run into a man, but Subaru doesn't let them stay there for long and they continue walking, but Emilia mutters that she feels like she's met the man before. At the inn, they see Rachins arguing with Joshua, and Subaru tells the others that Rachins and his two buddies tried to rob him of all he had. Garfield steps forward to take care of them, but they suddenly notice Reinhard behind them, so Garfield attacks him. Reinhard blocks his attack and says he's glad to see that Subaru is doing well. He says there's much he'd like to talk about since they haven't seen each other in a while. Subaru tells Garfield to chill out since Reinhard is his friend and they don't need to worry about him. Reinhard sees that Garfield is the one known as Emilia's shield and apologizes if he offended him, saying he'll be more careful from now on. He reveals that Rachins works for Lady Felt, and they head inside the inn together while Rachins leaves. They meet Ferris, Crush, and Wilhelm, but notice that he and Reinhard aren't looking each other in the eye. Anastasia says she genuinely just wanted to talk to them all a little, which is why she didn't invite the ones who don't listen. Felt says the reason they came here is because Anastasia said she had info regarding the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. Subaru angrily gets up, so Anastasia says she wasn't being mean to him. She just figured it'd fetch a higher price from Crush than from him. He frustratingly says he understands a merchant's way of thinking. Joshua sees that he's grown, but he annoyingly tells him to not provoke him since he's barely holding back. Crutch says she feels it's best to have as many people with this possible goal, so she'll be sharing the information with him. Subaru thanks her and says he'll live up to her expectations for sure before Feld arrives as well, and says they should all drop the formalities. Later, while the others are relaxing, Garfield steps out for a bit, frustrated by not being as strong as Reinhard. Outside, he keeps seeing Elsa, who says he really is a coward and the only reason he didn't die by her hand is because he got a little bit lucky. Mimi arrives and asks if something happened since he's making a weird face, so he says if this doesn't look like a fun face. They both watch the sunset from the bridge, but a boat is suddenly freed and is about to crash into some kids, so Garfield swiftly saves them. He decides to escort one of the kids to his house, but is shocked to see who his mom is. While Betty is sleeping, Subaru encounters Wilhelm, who reveals that he was not as articulate in the past as he is now. He only knew how to swing his sword, and the things he thought during that were what solely shaped who he is. His wife made him realize this obvious truth, and ever since then, whenever he swings a sword, he thinks of his wife. Subaru remembers that his wife was the previous sword saint, but Wilhelm says in peacetime, she was an ordinary woman who loved flowers. He tells Subaru his name has spread far and wide, so when Subaru comes across something he cannot do alone, he is able to see it through by gathering others who cannot do things alone. Subaru says he's just an insignificant good for nothing, so Wilhelm says he likes him for that. He mutters that whenever he talks to him, he wonders why he cannot talk to his grandson, Reinhard, like this, and says he has 3 regrets in his life that he makes no excuses for. One of those is the cause of the rift between his grandson and him. He was irredeemably and unforgivably foolish. He says he's realized that he truly ought to approach Reinhard, but he could not be more ashamed. Subaru says he doesn't know if the white will has anything to do with the awkwardness between him and Wilhelm, but he knows Wilhelm spent over 10 years avenging his grandma, so he wants to know about it, and is looking forward to hearing it from Wilhelm. The next morning, Emilia sees that Subaru seems to be in a very good mood this morning, so he says something good happened before he went to bed last night. They notice that Ada doesn't seem well, so he mutters that he saw lots of people last night and ended up getting hung over. He says he hasn't seen Garfield around, so Subaru says he's in a bit of a sensitive state right now. They meet Felt and ask why Reinhard isn't with her, so she says she's not a child that needs to be with him, and if she calls for him, he'll be here in a second. As they sit down, Anastasia asks Joshua to deliver a letter to the main gate in Hetero and Tyvi's stead. The others arrive as well and are served breakfast. A voice suddenly starts echoing in the city, so Anastasia assures them this is just a broadcast made using a meteor at the city hall, and Otto tells Subaru that Kiritaka was the one who proposed this broadcast and provided the meteor. On the speaker, Liliana starts singing a song as Wilhelm asks Reinhard to help him cook the dish since he can't seem to do it, so he smilingly agrees. However, Reinhard's father, Heinkel, drunkenly enters the room and asks Reinhard if Wilhelm took a huge load off his shoulders since he avenged the previous sword saint after Reinhard let her die. He tells Wilhelm that he of all people is in no position to criticize him when he was the first one to blame Reinhard for killing the previous sword saint after all. Emilia gets up and asks what he's come here for. Hinkle annoyingly says she's not how he heard she'd be at all. Emilia tells him to answer her, and Felt cheerily says he's looking pretty lame now. Anastasia says she'd like if this boorish man left, and Julius tells Henkel he believes it would be best for all of them if he removes himself. However, Priscilla suddenly arrives behind him with Aldebaran. Priscilla confirms that she bought Heinkel here, so Subaru questions why she did that. If she had go give a reason, she says because it seemed like it would be amusing and she couldn't very well miss out on an unsightly family drama. Aldebaran tells Subaru neither of them will gain anything from duking it out here, but Subaru questions if Priscilla is allowed to just trample on people's hearts like that. Hinkle reminds Felt that the Astria estate belongs to him, and he never gave that to Reinhard, nor does he ever intend to. Reinhard starts saying something, but Felt tells him to stop being so nervous. Priscilla suddenly makes Heinkel fall unconscious and raises her sword, but Aldebaran stops her. Felt says she doesn't care who says what because she'll never go down without a fight and will make Heinkel concede the family estate to Reinhard. Priscilla says that's fine because her eventual victory is guaranteed, so she wants to have some fun and Teos on the way there. Later, Subaru annoyingly says he got angry for no reason, but Julia says his anger is what promoted everyone to be calm. He suddenly bows and says he's thanking Subaru for putting his righteous indignation on display in his stead. Subaru questions what makes him think he was getting mad for his sake, and insists that he was mad because they pissed him off. Julius says the primary problem lies with the Astria family, so if Henkel decided to start harboring rebellious intentions against the kingdom, he'd have to consider the possibility of the Sword Saint's household becoming their enemy. He reveals that 15 years ago, a member of the royal family was kidnapped. At the time, William was captain of the Royal Knights, and he was responsible for conducting the search for the missing party. The subjugation of the White Wheel, which the previous Sword Saint was a part of, happened while Sir Willem was away from the capital on his search. Later, Emilia asks Subaru what sort of super-friendly chat he was having with Julius in the garden, so he says they were both just keeping an eye on their enemy and making some small talk. They notice a crowd, and Subaru is surprised to see Priscilla dancing to Liliana's music. Priscilla tells them she doesn't dance unless she feels like it, and Liliana's song was worthy of bringing that out in her. She asks Liliana to serve as her personal singer, so Liliana says she's honored to hear that, but she's going to decline since she's a mere traveler who will be carried on the way on again one day, and no person or boundary can hold her in place. Priscilla understands but notices that Subaru's expression looks weird, so he says he was afraid she was going to cut Liliana in half for turning her down. Emilia agrees that she'd always thought Priscilla was someone who would do anything to get what she wanted. However, Priscilla says if the entire world is her garden, it doesn't matter where the bird chooses to sing. Liliana says she'll sing another song and asks Subaru to prepare some snacks for them to eat, so he begrudgingly agrees. He runs into Rachen's, but they suddenly notice someone on the tower making an announcement. The girl declares that she is the Sin Archbishop of the witch cult representing Wrath, Saris Romani Conti. She tells them to not be angry and apologizes for taking up their precious time, but there's something she must be absolutely certain of. Subaru says he's keeping a girl waiting, so he'd appreciate if Saris would do whatever she's going to do and let them go. She decides to quickly get to the point in that case and says the thing she wants to be certain of is a matter of love. She suddenly holds up a bound boy and introduces himself as Luzbel Callard, a 9-year-old boy who lives here. She announces that Luzbel has a cute friend named Tina, and she had trouble deciding who to bring here, but Luzbel begged her so desperately to not bring Tina that she decided to have him assist her instead. It becomes apparent that Saris is mind-controlling the entire crowd as they tearfully cheer her on and start clapping for her. Saris happily raises Luzbel up and drops him down, killing him before cutting off the heads of Subaru and the entire crowd. Subaru suddenly returns to the moment when Liliana asked him to bring them some snacks and says he feels sick. Subaru assures them that he just got a bit light-headed and wonders if he returned here because he died. He's about to ask Betty to come with him, but tells her to stay with Emilia. He admits he could run for a change of pace and heads off. Subaru reaches the tower and sees that Luzbel is tying himself up. Luzbel says if he doesn't do this, Tina will be in danger, but Subaru says there are lots of people in this city he can rely on, so he's going to be fine. However, Saris suddenly appears behind Subaru and strangles him with the chain, declaring that she should seek Tina's assistance next. Subaru returns in front of the girls again and wonders who's strong enough to beat Saris, isn't affected by authorities, and can be at the square in 10 minutes. He realizes Reinhard is the person he's looking for and hurriedly asks Rachen's where he is, but he runs out of time and Saris takes control of the crowd again. Saris announces that this will be over pretty quickly, but Reinhard swiftly appears and apologizes to Subaru for getting here. He says it took him a bit of time to find the shortest route, but he understands why Rachen's called him here. Subaru and Rachen step out of it, so Reinhard rushes towards Saris and they start fighting. Reinhard smashes her into the ground, but as he slowly steps towards her to finish her off, Subaru realizes there's something wrong. He tries to warn him but loses control over himself. When Reinhard kills Saris, the entire crowd dies as well and Subaru once again returns to the girls. He shockingly realizes even Reinhard wasn't enough and asks Betty to come shopping with him, so she agrees to save his butt. He explains everything to her, so she says there might be a way to win, and says this is a job for Shamak since it separates the will of a spell's target from the rest of the world. In other words, if all those within range of the enemy's technique are brought into Shamak at once, they might be able to win. As they're heading into the tower, they run into Emilia, who sees that she was right when she thought they were acting strange. She warns Subaru that she won't go back even if he tells her to, because the witch cult is her business too. She understands that he's doing this to try and keep her safe, but she refuses to stand by with her eyes closed while he gets hurt. As Saris appears in front of the crowd on top of the tower, Emilia instantly attacks her with a giant ice spell. However, they notice that the crowd has already been mind-controlled, and they slowly start getting cornered, so Subaru's Betty to get Shamak ready. However, Betty reveals that this is a spiritual interference closer to a curse or hex, so Shamak will be useless against it. Saris angrily jumps down when she sees Emilia and declares that she's going to burn her alive and scatter her ashes over her husband's grave. She questions if she's not free to mourn, so Emilia says she has no idea what she's talking about. She understands that she's angry for attacking first, but tells her to free the innocent people here since they didn't do anything to her. Saris furiously orders Emilia to beg for forgiveness, but Emilia says she has an idea of her own and starts fighting Saris. As they're fighting, Subaru and Betty quickly save Luzbel. However, as Emilia is about to finish her off, she gets caught off guard upon seeing Tina in Saris's hands and is defeated. Subaru rushes to save her, but he suddenly sees a man holding Emilia in the fire. He declares that he has come to take back the person he is going to marry and reveals that he is the Sin Archbishop of the witch cult representing greed, Regulus Cornes. He says as promised he will be taking her as his 79th wife. Regulus says he's glad he made it in time since his wife might have been reduced to ashes. Cyrus thanks them for the consideration, but tells them to burn to a crisp now as she unleashes her flames at them. Ada gets some snacks from a bakery, but he suddenly watches a guard get killed. Shocked, he slowly asks the person who he is, so he introduces himself as the Sin Archbishop of the witch cult representing gluttony. Lie. Subaru is surprised to see that Regulus and Cyrus are against each other and tells Luzbel to get away from here, assuring him that they'll save Tina. Subaru tells Regulus to get away from Emilia and tries taking her from him. He warns him that Emilia is his bride, but Regulus says she's his bride before Subaru realizes Regulus didn't even know Emilia's name. Cyrus realizes Subaru is her husband, so Subaru tells her to stop hurting these people if she truly cares about him. However, she says she must refuse even if he's the one asking. She declares that she knows Emilia is the one he's truly after, so if he loves her so much, she'll burn her right in front of him. Don't do that. Subaru can't afford to lose more girls. Regulus says he hates to interrupt, but it's just about time now. He starts leaving, so Subaru chases after him, but he effortlessly breaks one of Subaru's legs for how crude he was earlier and says they're even now. Cyrus decides to leave as well, saying she must prioritize the Gospel's orders, and slowly falls unconscious. Presently, Garfield and Mimi head home, and she asks if he plans on meeting his mom again, but he questions if she's gone crazy. Last night, Garfield and Mimi sat down to have some tea, and the woman who doesn't know she's Garfield's mom says she mostly asks her guests what kind of tea they would like, but it came naturally to her today. Garfield decides to leave and says goodbye to Fred. Outside, as he's hurriedly running, Elsa keeps mocking him and finally falls down. His mom's husband hurries after then and thanks them for saving her son. He asks if there's anything he can do, so Garfield asks if Riela is his wife's real name. He says her real name is Recia, so the man asks what they know about his wife. Garfield mutters that that's what he wants to know as well, so the man decides to tell them the truth. He reveals that when he met Riela 15 years ago, she had already lost her memory. On his way home, he came across the site of a great rock slide and found Riela buried alive in it. Due to the accident, she didn't remember anything, and all he could find out from part of a name tag on her clothes was that her name started with R. He says he loves her and she is the most important woman in his life, so he is reluctant to ask this, but he wants to know what Garfield's relationship is to Riela. Garfield reluctantly says he doesn't have anything to do with her. The man apologizes before Riela arrives and gives them some snacks to take home, so Mimi says they'll be leaving for real now. Later, Mimi tells Garfield he's allowed to cry and comfortingly hugs him, so he starts weeping and questions why his mom went out to get milk and never came back. The next day, Garfield and Mimi are eating the snacks Riela gave them when a voice suddenly announces to the entire city that she's the Sin Archbishop of the witch cult representing lust and tells them all to get on their knees before her. Later, Subaru wakes up to see Aldebaran, who tells Subaru he was a mess when he found him. Betty reattached his foot and Ferris took over from there. They reveal that Betty is in a coma of sorts since she used up every last bit of her mana. Everyone was on the ground with the same injury as Subaru, but Betty went around healing people, so she should wake up if someone supplies her with mana. Subaru goes up to meet the girls to discuss what they're going to do next, and Krush asks if he's certain he fought an archbishops, so he says the one who hurt his leg and the one who took Emilia were both archbishops, so Wilhelm says they can assume the broadcast was genuine. Wilhelm reveals that they've stolen the meteor from the city hall, and he's now certain they've taken the 4 control towers as well, so if the water gates were to be opened, the entire city of Pristella will be submerged in an instant. They wonder what the archbishops want, so Anastasia reveals that Pristella was built as a trap to contain a witch. The witch met her end when the entire place was flooded, and her remains are still somewhere in the city. As Garfield is running through the streets, he's suddenly stopped by Riela, who asks if he's seen her children since they went out to play today, but she hasn't seen them. She adds that the meteor is at the city hall and her husband works there. Stunned, Garfield declares that he'll find her husband and children for her. Mimi and Garfield find a group of dead knights before suddenly noticing 2 hooded individuals behind them. Mimi says they're both really strong, so Garfield says that sounds fun and is about to step forward, but she stops him and says they can't handle them alone. However, Garfield says even if they try to turn tail and run, they're not going to let them, so they have to fight. In that case, Mimi says they clash once, then dodge and try to run away. She reminds him what they're here for, so he agrees. Meanwhile, Heinkel holds his sword to Felt's sword in front of Reinhard and asks if he's really going to abandon his master and his father just to rescue a bunch of strangers. Felt says this is just talk to scare Reinhard, but Heinkel asks if they want to try him. Subaru is stressing about how the Witch of Envy isn't actually dead, but Al tells him to relax and says just because they're talking about a witch, that doesn't mean they're specifically talking about the Witch of Envy. Anastasia says she doesn't know where the witch's remains are, and the only people who would know are the Council of 10. Julius suddenly calls them, and Hetero worryingly reveals that the effects of their divine protection is flowing from Mimi into them, and it's a really big wound. They suddenly hear the voice from before asking if they're all doing good. It says some rude people have raided the city hall, and they all disappoint her a lot. They suddenly hear something on the other side before the door opens to reveal a bloodied Garfield holding Mimi's injured body. He apologizes to Subaru in distress. He's a good for nothing, shocking them. Later, Ferris hurriedly tries to heal Mimi, but says the wound isn't closing. The Archbishop of Lust hopes they've understood by now. There's nothing they can do, so as punishment, she'll start turning the people in City Hall into the tiniest meat scraps. If they don't want that, she has one demand: the witch's remains. She adds that her people have taken position at all the Watergate towers, so they better not try anything funny. Kiritaka arrives and says they cannot move the witch's remains if they really exist, so they cannot give the Archbishop what she wants. He reveals that if they move the witch's remains, the damage would rival that of the time the city was flooded to kill the witch and would destroy the city. Ricardo and Mimi's sisters arrive, and he thanks Garfield since if he hadn't brought Mimi back here, she would have undoubtedly died, so they owe her. Subaru asks Garfield what happened since they have to take out the idiots attacking the city and need his strength for that. Garfield tells him about he and Mimi fought the hooded man and woman, but Mimi got gravely injured as they were trying to run away. Wilhelm says the wound that will not close is probably the work of the divine protection of the Grim Reaper. Subaru says Greed was the one who took Emilia away, so he doesn't want to leave her in his filthy hands, so he would say his priority is getting Emilia back, always the maiden less loser. However, the meteor is a problem, so their first priority has to be City Hall. That's some welcome character development. As they head out, Al has to leave to go find Priscilla, so he gives them a word of advice: if they find Gluttony, they shouldn't say their real names aloud. In front of the City Hall, Subaru tells everyone they'll do this as they discussed. They'll deal with each one individually in groups and take back the City Hall, but if they feel like they're at a disadvantage, they'll retreat at once. They rush forward and confront the man and woman from before. However, even after hitting them with everything, they're not able to defeat them, so they get ready to fight again. However, a dragon sitting on top of one of the towers sees that they really came here and reveals that it's the Archbishop of the witch cult representing Lust, Capella. She starts mocking Garfield using Mimi, but Subaru stops him. He annoyingly tells Capella to shut up since every time she speaks, she's ruining the image he had of dragons. He starts telling it off for attacking so haphazardly and says that should be enough time before Julius swiftly attacks Capella with a powerful beam. However, Capella unexpectedly starts healing herself and says the time has come, so she'll be heading back inside now. Subaru wonders if they have no choice but to go inside now, but Ricardo reminds him they still have to deal with these two. Garfield, Ricardo, and William stay behind while Julius, Subaru, and Crush quickly head to a rooftop. However, the Archbishop of Gluttony, Roy, creepily walks out from inside. He notices Subaru's angry expression and asks if he's someone who has something against them, so Subaru says if he's just a kid who ended up here with no sense of direction, then he should spit it out already since he'll let him go. However, Roy formally introduces himself, so Subaru angrily gets ready to fight him. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to channel, and I'll see you all next time.